Nobody can be completely full and complete and whole in any perfect way before anything. It's a constant work in progress.
What are these big myths that women hold back from embodying their power?
Women need to realize that this image of the good girl is actually a lie.
How can mothers hold space for their kids' emotions while also healing their own things that come up?
If you set your child up for too much bubble wrapping, then you actually create a fragility.
Hello, Brave Table fam. Welcome to another episode of The Brave Table, and I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis to be all things, just a little bit more brave in your actions, in your relationships, and in your life. And today, my goodness, we have the episode that you have all been waiting for. I know for so many years, some of you have written asking, when is she going to be on? Can we please have her on? Can we please have her on? So this is a monumental time for The Brave Table. We are talking all things conscious parenting, as well as how to have a radical awakening in your life. And a radical awakening, it could be waking up from the strings of the past of your own prison that you've had in your mind about maybe your relationship, maybe your traumas that you've grown up with, maybe the losses that you were going through, or maybe just a transition in life. Maybe your kids are out of the house. Maybe you are reconnecting back to yourself after a long period of time. Maybe you are just a mama that needs to learn more about how to manage her emotions as well as deal with her children. And I have the most iconic, legendary human here to talk with you on the Brave Table. She is none other than Dr. Shefali. And Dr. Shefali is a clinical psychologist. She's a PhD. She's had 3 masters, best-selling author, international speaker, renowned for her work in conscious parenting. Oprah Winfrey praises her approach, which blends Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. With a doctorate from Columbia, Dr. Shefali has authored 6 books, including The Conscious Parent and The Awaken Family. She leads Conscious Coaching Institute and maintains a private practice for families and couples. She is also most known for revolutionizing the parenting space with the concept of conscious parenting, which encourages deep self-awareness, healing, and connection to family dynamics. Her work focuses on awakening individuals to their conditioned patterns so that they can break free from generational cycles and live more authentically. Now, in today's episode, we are going to go into the difference between conscious parenting, gentle parenting, how to reclaim your power as a parent, as a mom, as well as how to come to your own radical awakening as the queen of your life, and what we can learn from the patriarchy. What can we learn in our family dynamics? How we can soften in our own circles and come to the next chapter of who we're becoming with grace and with ease. You are going to love this episode. You are going to save this episode. You're going to send this to a bestie. You are going to send this to a fellow mama, and buckle up because you are going to take notes. Get ready for this wild ride with Dr. Shefali on the Brave Table this week. Hello, love. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So excited to be here with you.
Oh my gosh, it's been a long time coming. I feel like we have so much to dive into. And first, I just kind of want to start because I was so obsessed with your book, Radical Awakening. And I want to just start there. What does radical awakening truly mean for women?
I think, we women are so conditioned to live in the fog of this toxic patriarchy where we are taught to dismiss our voice and divorce from our authentic selves, that a radical awakening is the reclamation of our inner knowing and the trust in our inner guidance. Every woman, every human has this internal ability to guide themselves, but it gets drowned out by the opposition of domination. And so we women, because we live in this very toxic, dominating, masculine world, we learn to doubt our inner feminine voice and our capacity to guide our own destiny. And so a radical awakening is helping women in particular re-enter and reclaim that inner guidance.
And is it because in the book you talk about this good girl conditioning And, we had a chat even before we hit record about our lineages. And I think a lot of times when we come from this Asian upbringing or children of immigrants upbringing, this idea of the good girl or the good daughter or, the firstborn, the martyr of the firstborn daughter, what are these big myths that women hold back from embodying their power when they are taught to be the good girl or the one that is the savior for the family?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, because these kind of toxic cultures, unknowingly, right, because it's all passed down unconsciously by our mothers, really, raise their daughters to subscribe to tradition, to really keep safe and to be protected, right? I think it comes from a good intention. Don't ruffle the feathers. Don't speak too loudly. Don't take space. Don't sit at the table. It's actually to protect us, but in a weird way, it shackles us and it keeps us from taking risks, from breaking limits, from experimenting with our different potentials. We begin to toe the line and stay in our lane so desperately, and become so afraid of nonconformity and so threatened by the potential ostracism that we think will come about, that we actually never even flap our wings, leave alone spread them wide. And so we limit ourselves, cut ourselves at our knees, and before we've even started to walk. But again, it's passed down to us girls out of protection, I think, out of a well meaning intention, but it's so suffocating and toxifying because it keeps us quiet and towing the line and allows the current toxic systems to benefit and to be tyrannical, and it allows things to just stay in the status quo, because a woman who's cut off from her power, from her capacity to choose her own destiny, is a very, very servile, safe woman. The minute a woman begins to make her own choices and understands her own destiny, she becomes a dangerous opponent for men who are only used to being tyrannical and who are not used to being equal or allowing others to have space as well. It's so much easier to be a tyrant. And the way to be a tyrant is to keep your women and other humans submissive. So women need to realize that this image of the good girl is actually a lie. You're not a good girl. You are just a scared girl. But it's sold to us. The package is you're a good girl. And so we like it, you see. So then we begin to get married to this image of a good girl, but actually it's a cowardly girl. It's a weak girl. But they don't say that. They wrap it up in this special wrapping paper called the good girl.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And when I was reading your book, my in-laws were in town. And I love them. They're amazing. They're from India and they're from Jaipur, and they come and they visit us, a couple times a year. And I had your book, and literally I was reading about the good girl, and my daughter, who was 2 at the time, she's now 3.5. And she was, I don't know, doing something, but my mother-in-law said, if you keep doing that, you're not going to be the good girl. And it was just this trigger of, there was so much rebellion that came out of me. I'm like, what are you trying to say? And I don't know, I was so triggered by that. And I think that, it's, I can see that then getting passed down to her to then get that validation, because of course she's going to want to please her dadi that she only sees maybe once a year.
Right.
And I think for a lot of us moms who are trying to, we read your book and we're trying to reparent ourselves in the process. But then we also have our elders who are, they're also having their experience with the next generation. How do we balance that? How do we make peace with that? And is it something that we can undo?
I don't think we should look to undo what the older generation is doing directly, because it may never work, right? So instead of trying to change them, we have to decide, is it very toxic for our children? And if it's very toxic, then that elder needs to be separated. And I know that is such anathema for people from our cultures, but we have to create some separation to protect our children if it's very abusive. However, if it's just mild and we can handle it, then we have to provide the immediate antidote, which is what you try to do. You try to step in, you try to say, don't pay attention to grandma. There's no such thing as good girl or bad girl. Everybody's just a girl. You can just be a girl. You don't have to be a good girl or a bad girl. And you can create that medication for that infection that's coming down the generations. um, but it's a call. If that woman, whoever, the grandmother, the mother-in-law, is going to babysit your child, and you know that they're going to infect your child with a lot of toxic messages, you as a parent have to decide how important is that relationship, and how can I protect my child. And just because they are the grandmother, does that mean I expose my child with messages that she may have to undo for the rest of her life?
Even double click deeper into that, I feel like there has been this kind of resonance. I entered my 40s, and now there's this essence where, the younger Neeta in my 20s would probably care so much about living into this good girl uh, kind of archetype. And then we get into our 30s and we're discovering ourselves. But I feel like there's something about being in your 40s that you just don't care. Can you speak to that? Of, is this kind of the evolution? Is this the radical awakening? Is there something that we can impart on the younger girlies that are kind of listening to perhaps this show and, watching this on YouTube? What is that wisdom that we can impart on them to maybe even walk the walk sooner?
Yeah, the good news is that I think many of the younger generation is walking the walk and understanding that they have a right to be empowered and have their voices heard. My generation really got screwed. I think I'm hoping I'm one of the last, but then I'm in my 50s, right? Early 50s. If you're in your 40s, then yes, the 40s are a very powerful time because, in my opinion, we've checked off a lot of the things that they told us to check off. So we did the career, we did the education, we did the good girl student, we were high achievers, we got married, we had the children. And then you realize, oh, it's not made me happier. So now you're feeling more empowered to begin to burn those edifices that you thought was so holy, and you realize they're not so holy, and you begin to have the courage to speak up. And I think becoming a mother is so empowering to women because they see their potential, they see how they are so responsible, so loving, so caring, that they can give up their night's sleep, they can have a career, they can take care of the house. And that's, we are super women now, and we feel very empowered by that. And hopefully that leads to a deconstruction of all the lies that we were told and all the lies we believed. And finally we can begin to emancipate ourselves from the traditions that have stifled us till now.
Oof. So, which brings me to, segue into kind of what you talk about. You've said that pain is the portal. So, how do we begin to embrace discomfort as a tool for awakening rather than something to escape from? Because I know that a lot of times on the Brave Table, we're talking about navigating relationships. I've gone through divorce, and I know so many of my friends also have, where they're kind of passing through. And it is kind of a painful time. You're going through loss, or they're experiencing a loss of someone in their life. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the instinct when we go through discomfort is to, of course, shut down or flee in some way, to freeze or flee. And the reason for that is because we've associated that discomfort with a lot of storytelling. And we've been told that this is a bad thing, you're a bad person, it's bad, you're bad, they're bad, something like that. And because of that, that feels too unbearable. But if we begin to understand that it is really only the end of an era or the end of a chapter or the end of the way things were, and ends are actually just transitions to new beginnings, then we wouldn't feel so uncomfortable. But because we've been trained, especially when it comes to marriage and divorce, to view it as a failure, to view it as if this is a bad thing because I'm a bad person and culture thinks I'm bad, that we begin to have that pain and discomfort. If we begin to teach our children that endings are just such necessary transitions to new beginnings, then we would almost never feel bad about
Yeah.
anything: loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of a relationship, heartbreak, betrayal. It would just be something we welcome. And
Mm,
it is in the sitting with the pain, the transition, being in the dark tunnel and
mm,
feeling those feelings where you begin to understand, oh, I co-created this reality. And you begin to reflect, how was I a willing participant and why? And when you take that wisdom, then you can go into your next iteration with so much more empowerment and insight, right? But if we just shut down from the lesson and just blame the other person and just medicate ourselves through it, we don't learn about our own evolution. And
mm,
the reason we are wherever we are emotionally has to do with our co creation as well. Now, physical servitude can be forced on someone, right? You can
mm,
lock me up. That's not my
sure.
fault. But the emotional bondage is up to me. Even if you
Mm,
lock me up, you are not locking up my mind. And that
mm,
mental freedom is our liberation. And that is what you develop through the sitting through and the sitting with the pain and the discomfort.
yeah, it's almost as if I think as when we're so young, we're kind of told, don't cry, don't feel a certain way. We're told to suppress and suppress and suppress. But there's only so much that we can suppress, especially when we're going through some of these life transitions, such as, loss or loss of a friend or, a loved one, or even just going through kind of a painful ending of a chapter of a marriage. And so then what do you say to those who are in that space of reinvention and perhaps even they're listening to this, but perhaps it's still kind of raw and tender and real? How do we reclaim our power then in that way?
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into this positive psychology obsession of just, fake it till you make it. And there's value in that sometimes. But the most important way to reclaim your power is to truly do that inner work, to understand all the ways we were first not in our power, all the ways that we gave up our power, all the ways we were false and living in ego,
Mm,
and why. And the way to the true self is not to go grab a true self or affirm your way to a true self. The way to a true self is to shed the false self. And
mm,
many people don't want to do that work because it's difficult to
mhm,
undo the falsity and the inauthenticity. But when you undo the falsity and undo it more and undo it more, there lies your true self. It's waiting for you. It is in you. It is beckoning you. It is just covered up and disguised by the layers of your masks. So, what I
mm,
teach, I have a coaching institute, I do coaching almost every day. I teach people to recognize, to learn about, to identify their ego masks. And
mm,
when you shed those masks and resist those masks, you come closer and closer to your authentic self. The authentic self isn't something you have to go buy, you have to skinny your way into, you have to wealth your way into, you have to stealth your way into.
mm.
You just have to dissolve the false self to reveal the true self.
You're bringing up so much of, a lot of times what we navigate because we're taught, you know, become doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer. That's the ego. And we're, in my kind of path, I became a cosmetic dentist, and then it's kind of the unraveling. And for me, the divorce was kind of the unraveling. And I think a lot of my audience and our community, they're now stepping into this new era of themselves, reclaiming who they are, but realizing that there's also some work to do. So Tell us, is this school, is this also for folks who are ready to do their own healing, to come back to themselves?
This institute that I created was with a dual purpose. One, to create the skills to transform your own life, because you have to be your own best guinea pig. You cannot help other people transform till you've kind of arrived at those tools yourself. So it is teaching the skills to transform your own parenting, your own empowerment, your own relationships first. So it's got a parallel process and a parallel track where you transform yourself and you learn the skills and the tools to transform others and build a career out of it. So it's a conscious parenting and life certification program. So you can work with people who are parents and non-parents, but you first learn the tools to practice on yourself. And it's been a phenomenal success. We have coaches all over the world now.
Oh, I love that. And when is the next cohort beginning?
It's twice a year. So sometime in the spring, the next one happens to be in 2025 in April, and then in the fall. But it's always every spring, every fall. It's 5 months. It's all online. And I do live coaching for people every single week for
Oh,
them to
wow.
observe me in real time. And we
Mm.
can observe that. And that's the unique process that I offer in this institute that many people don't offer, which is real life observation of how I work in real time. And so it's a vulnerable making process.
And you're going through kind of some of the things that they're live working with.
Absolutely. And then we deconstruct it in real time. They tell me the things I've done wrong. They tell me what they liked. They ask me questions. So it's a living laboratory, because otherwise it's just intellectual and not practical. And I made the program really practical. You know, I have a PhD, I have 3 masters. I distilled everything I know and took the best of my teachings and reduced it and systematized it into a 5 month program where everything you need, you have to
Mm.
launch a coaching career and to change people's lives. And I think people want that. They want to live a life of meaning and encouragement, of service and volunteer and help and change. And that's what this program gives them. It gives them the tools to go into schools, to lead a workshop at the local clinic, and to have a thriving one-on-one practice.
So beautiful. We're going to link everything in the show notes. So whoever is interested, I will it's so beautiful. And you've been doing what, 12 cohorts now, right? It's been running for a very long time.
Yes, yes. So 2 a year. So we've almost done 6 years now. So it's a well seasoned, well oiled machine. I have an amazing team. We have a 24/7, community page where I support the people, both myself and my team. And then we meet every week. We have smaller groups. I mean, it's such a rich program where you build community, but you learn to heal yourself. And that is the greatest gift any program can give you.
It's such a gift. And so I wanted to segue into a little bit on for the mamas that are watching and listening to this. And because you talk so much about, you know, conscious parenting and how, I mean, for me personally, as I'm personally curious about this, having two kids, 3 and 6, how can mothers hold space for their kids' emotions while also healing their own things that come up? Like in that example of me and my mother-in-law, it just brought me back to when I was told I wasn't a good girl. And maybe that's where the trigger was. And so in this practice, how can we hold space for both and the duality of both?
I know it's so hard in the moment. So I think first is not to be so hard on yourself when you do lose your mind, because you are going to lose your mind. So instead of pretending like you need to be perfect and never lose your mind, just work on yourself every single day, a little bit by little bit. And when you do lose your mind, you quickly recover and you quickly introspect and reflect. Wow, what was coming up for my little girl at that moment? What memory did this spark in me? And do that inner work and make the recovery time quicker and quicker. And hopefully the episodes will take longer and longer before the next one comes. But let me tell you, no amount of work you can do, and this is coming from me, you will still lose your shit. So it's not about controlling and never losing your mind. I lose it all the time. And my friends will tell me things like, oh my God, if you can lose it, why can't anyone else? I said, exactly. It doesn't matter because you don't know when you're going to get hit with an old wound, and your
Yeah.
children are new to you. You've never met them at the age of 8 or 12. I told my 21-year-old daughter, this is my first time with a 21-year-old daughter. I've never known you before. So new things are coming up, right? The other day, she pointed out how I was projecting onto her how I was at 21. And I had just come to America and I was an immigrant and how I survived. And she was looking at me going, Mom, I don't even relate to you. I understand, but I don't relate to this because I'm not an immigrant at 21. And I was putting
Wow.
all this pressure on her and I didn't even realize. So, what I'm saying is that we are going to keep doing this. The point is not to expect perfection. The point
Mm.
is to grow and learn from it and be willing to look in the mirror and say, wow, that is my problem. I need to go heal myself.
Yeah, and it's almost as if you know, to be able to, again, going to sit. I wrote a book called That Sucked Now What? How to Embrace the Joy and Chaos and Find Magic in the Mess. And it was supposed to be a lighthearted kind of take on the duality of the emotions that we experience in motherhood. But it's, to normalize that it's not going to always be kind of in this perfect state, that there is going to be the messiness. And, so often, many of us moms, we lose ourselves in these roles of trying to be, this ideal parent. And what do you suggest? How can moms try to, or do you think balancing their own personal growth or their own kind of going into uh, their own healing while being present for their kids? Is that even possible to kind of go through the shadows while also, you know, trying to find balance with their kids in their daily lives?
Yeah, I think it's an illusion to think that you can be completely healed before you get into a parenting situation or a partnering situation. Our parenting and our partnering is the conduit to growth if you take it like that. Because perfection doesn't exist. So you can never actually be whole
Mm,
and then do something. You become whole as you're living and as you're processing. And you allow your motherhood and your partnerhood to wake you up because nothing will wake you up than a relationship, an intimate relationship, but also nothing will heal you than through a relationship. Doesn't mean the relationship is healing, but you can heal mainly through relationship because we are relational beings. Our wounds occurred in relationship, so the wounds will show up again in relationship. So it makes sense to work it through while you're going through it, but also to take it seriously so that you're not dumping on your children and your partner in the
mm.
process, right? You want to be very aware that you have work to do. The work never ends, and you can do it in tandem, but definitely don't think you're not going to be doing the work constantly, because the illusion of thinking that I can be healed before I do the parenting or the partnering is that, oh, so if I think I'm healed, then when my partner or my parent or my child triggers me, I'm going to just blame them because I'm under the illusion that I've done all my work. But that's
Mm.
not true. Nobody can do that. Nobody can be completely full and complete and whole in any perfect way before anything. It's a constant work in progress.
Yeah. And I think also we're losing the chance of being able to, you know, kind of expand into the next layer of ourselves if we are able to commit to the work. But I think the point on, not trauma dumping on your partner or your kids is probably the biggest factor as
No,
well.
it's so hard. It's hard, but actually, when we dump and if we're conscious, we can then own it and then
Mm,
heal it. Right? We can
mm.
say, "Oh my goodness, that was such a trauma dump, and I've messed this connection for this moment. How do I recover? How do I heal?" I think allowing yourself the grace to mess up and heal is really important.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is to normalize the moments that we do mess up in front of our kids, because I think, you know, in kind of how we grew up, or even I grew up, my there were times where, I didn't get to see that out of my parents. Or if you did, you saw the toxic version of that when everyone just blew up. And
Yeah.
so, um, what do you think about this whole kind of this whole way of parenting, of the gentle parenting now that's coming up with millennials, and how is that different from conscious parenting? And are we doing our kids a disservice from the traditional parenting that our ancestors have have done for us? Because I feel like this is a question that I get asked a lot, and so I am going to just share it with you.
I love it. I think gentle parenting is a positive direction because it requires the parent to stop, to consider, to be compassionate, to take care. The only place where I see a little pitfall is that it can feel inauthentic and it can feel very scripted. And what that does then is actually stifle the authentic instincts that the parent has, and also stifle the wild, unpredictable natures of humans. We don't need to be completely scripted, and we don't need to always have the right words, because that's actually creating fragility in ourselves and our children. We don't want to be so, bubble wrapping everything that we pretend to our children that life is gentle, or that
Mm.
everyone will be gentle, because they won't. Life is not gentle. Life is harsh. Life can be cruel. Life can be brutal, and humans are can be assholes. So if you set your child up for too much bubble wrapping, then you actually create a fragility, and there's an inauthentic nature there. So we want to be conscious. The difference between conscious and gentle is that consciousness is about trying to not put on your child all your projections, all your baggage, all your anxieties. But you can still be authentic, right? And you can still be unpredictable and wild in your expression. You don't have to be scripted. And I think many of these new parents are trying to be so scripted and polite that they actually lose the element of human connection and create a sense of over anxiety in their children, because now children cannot handle anything that feels spontaneous or wild or unpredictable. But life is wild, life is rich with unpredictability, and we need to not be afraid of that. We can't bubble wrap our children. We need
Mm.
to just be aware of our projections onto them, but we can still be ourselves. We can still go, oh my goodness, or don't touch that. It's okay
Mm.
to have life in you. And I think gentle parenting sometimes makes it too mechanistic and reductionistic and robotic, and then we lose our life, the element of life in it.
Well, and it brings me to, this next question of, how are the kids and the teenagers growing up now that, if they've had everything on a platter and they've been gentle parented and they have their first rejection. And I know that you know of stories, I know of stories in the moms groups or in schools. I was just talking to a friend of mine whose um, son is in high school, and they just had their school suffered a loss. A kid committed suicide, and it was literally this week. And heavy, heavy stuff, and it was over a girl. And so, and now with this rise of AI and companionship, and people are getting access to that, it seems like there is going to be this isolation and loneliness. And how do we then equip our kids? Uh, is it teaching them that toughness so that they can be more resilient when they get to face rejection? So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's not so much about teaching them resilience, it's about not overprotecting them from the isness of life. So if it's raining and they forget an umbrella, they forget an umbrella and we have to get wet. Or if somebody says that they are stupid and fat or ugly in a mean way, not in a, natural way, then they have to deal with that, right? Okay, so let's talk about your feelings. Let's deal with your feelings rather than let's not have the feelings. So sometimes we go so far in bubble wrapping our children that we're trying to make sure that they have no uncomfortable feelings. And that's what actually kills the resilience rather than teaching them that feelings, crying, anger, resentment, rejection are part of life. Nothing to go over crazy about. Oh, you didn't get invited? Okay, I don't get invited to a lot of things either. Oh, the electricity went off. Okay, we have to wait. Oh, you want a toy and we don't have the money? Okay, we wait, right? So we don't overblow life up to be a fantasy land because that ruins resilience. The isness of life can be dealt with compassion, but it needs to be dealt with. And we cannot keep hiding things from our children. Now, again, we don't show a 5-year-old about a bombing or suicide. We, of course, temper it based on their chronological age, but we allow them little by little to be exposed to life's difficulties because that teaches them that they can handle life's difficulties. So, exposure is your greatest protection. Of course, exposure with a balance of their developmental processing.
Well, and for those women who are navigating relationships, marriage, friendships, family, and they're starting to awaken to themselves, they're starting to awaken to reclaim their power. What do you suggest on how they handle when everyone around them does not and they are the only ones waking up?
There's no such thing. There are always women who are waking up. And I actually started a community 2 weeks ago called the Conscious Circle. It's actually for humans and women mostly who want to wake up with me.
Mm.
But I also, at one time in my life, felt very isolated, that I was the only one, no one was talking my language. So, what I did is I went out and created community. I started my own summit. I created a women's group back then. Now I have this conscious circle. People can look it up on my website. There's no such thing as you're the only one. That is a myth that people want you to believe, and that you begin to believe that actually keeps you in your cage. There are always women who can support you, who are leaders, who are empowered, who will raise you up and build you up. You just have to intentionally find them. So I'm a big person around community. I think sisterhoods and communities are vital for our survival. And that's why I keep creating them, So if anytime you go on my page, you will find a community to join. If you really want to be around like-minded and like-hearted people, I think community is the antidote. Connection is the antidote to our modern tyranny that we're living with in the modern toxic patriarchy.
So good. So good. And I know that our time is coming to an end. I want to put the what did you call it? The conscious circle. So I'm going to put
Yes.
that in the show notes as well so that everybody, and this is also a community that you have that you just launched.
And by the way, if people join the community, they get all my workshops. I do workshops every few weeks, but they can also ask real time questions, and my entire team answers. So we have parenting circles for teens, for toddlers. We have relationship circles, a divorce, single parent, patchwork families, neurotypical families. So we have a sub circle for all these different groups. So you feel
Wow.
supported, you feel like you can just vent. We have one for menopause. So we're really building a support base so women, especially mothers, don't feel alone.
Oh, I love this so much. Everybody needs to join this.
It's less than $20 a month. So I hope people join.
Oh my goodness. Amazing. Amazing. Well, as we end this call, we go through our spill the chai section. So I'll be asking you rapid fire round questions, so you can answer as short as you want, as long as you want. But what is your guilty pleasure currently?
My guilty pleasure would be some ice cream and some cake and some, so anything sweet and decadent.
What is lighting you up the most right now?
I think just my love for what I do and helping people around the world to suffer less. This lights me up. Talking to people like you lights me up. Doing this self growth work lights me up.
What is one belief about parenting you wish more people would question?
That it is supposed to be easy. You're supposed to be good at it. You're supposed to feel good. Sometimes it feels like crap. Sometimes you feel like a failure. And sometimes it is so difficult. You wonder why you became a parent. And allowing yourself to experience the extremes of this is part of the process.
What is in your chai when you drink it?
I like my Indian black tea with milk and sugar.
Okay. Amazing. And finally, what are you braving right now?
I'm braving just going through transitions in my life. My daughter's about to graduate, so I'm going through that and just reiterating my business all the time, traveling more, taking more risks. I think braving transitions and endings and not being so afraid of new beginnings.
Amazing. And one word that describes this season of life.
Brave. I think that's a great word for me. Brave and uh, courageous, risk taking. That would be where I am right now.
Amazing. Dr. Shefali, you are iconic. Thank you for pouring into our community. Thank you for all your work that you have done, I mean, for so many years now, and just paving the way for the next generation of healers and light workers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, welcome back to the other side. Oh my goodness, did you just fall in love with Dr. Shefali? So go ahead, grab her book. You can get it wherever books are sold, Radical Awakening. And you can also go to her website, drshefali.com, where you will get access to all of the latest and exclusive updates on what certification is up and out. You can find it at coaching.drshefali.com, and I will put that also in the show notes. And for her Conscious Parent, Conscious Circle membership, I think that is one of the best ways that we can actually come together and have community in whatever stage of parenting, motherhood that you are at. So go to theconsciousparent.com/conscious circle, and I will put that also in the show notes. And if you were curious about going deeper in your conscious parenting journey, your radical self awakening to yourself, to your feminine way, to your intuition, I've linked 3 additional episodes in the show notes as well. And you can go ahead and follow Dr. Shefali if you haven't followed her already at Dr. Shefali. That is DOCTOR Shefali on Instagram. She is also on YouTube. And if you are watching this on YouTube already and you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? We would so love for you to hit the subscribe button and like this video and comment below on what changed your life in parenting, and what moved you today. And if you haven't already written us a 5-star review, what are you waiting for? We love to hear how any of our guests have shaped your life or changed your perspective in any way. You can also tag us at the Brave Table on Instagram at The Brave Table or at Dr. Neeta Bhushan. And if there's anybody in your life that needs to be a little bit more brave, go ahead and send this episode to them. I am forever grateful. If you are listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, go ahead and hit that like button, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave. You know I've got so much more in store for you. So if you are really ready to dive in and keep owning your emotions like the boss that you are, click right here. Go ahead, don't be shy. I'll see you in the next one. Keep shining.